Matt Sinclair here. I wanted to talk about the new CMA decision on Microsoft's proposed merger with Activision Blizzard. It's out today, and in short, the answer is no. They've prohibited the merger. I've taken a look through the decision quickly, and in this video, I'm going to go over 5 kind of interesting points I spotted that I think it's worth being aware of that might have implications, beyond this merger. Firstly, CMA did not find this merger was going to substantially reduce competition in the big established console market, where the money is for video games. They found it would do so besides mobile games, we'll come on to those later. They found it would do so in the nascent and kind of shaky cloud gaming market. Let's remember Google shuttered Stadia relatively recently. While I think most people expect cloud gaming is going to be a big deal over time, there's still some questions, right? There's still stuff that you're having to do over the internet that you're having to do locally, which is technically challenging. So you kind of see this as regulators doing what they said they'd do in digital markets in response to perceived failures in earlier regulation, which is to look further ahead and at less well-established markets, try and intervene early. But obviously that means these decisions are going to be a lot more speculative. By their nature, they're not dealing with, well, we've got X big players, we're going to have fewer big players, therefore the market is less competitive, therefore prices, right? If that was the case, you'd be absolutely looking at that existing console gaming market. They're looking at how it's going to affect the evolution of new digital platforms, either existing digital platforms they expect to change quite materially, or entirely new platforms that might come out in the future. This isn't the first time this has happened. CMA did something very similar with Amazon and Deliveroo, but I think it's the first where it's come to an outright decision. The Amazon Deliveroo deal ended up getting approved essentially during COVID because of the sheer shock to Deliveroo's finances at that point. Secondly, they didn't find the Microsoft's proposed remedy persuasive. Now, partly they point to a kind of long-standing concern that they'll get into, to put it crudely, regulating monopoly rather than having a competitive market. And that's, regulating monopoly and is good if you can have a competitive market. Partly, I think this is the interesting novel point, is that remedies are inherently harder with these kind of more speculative deals. If you're dealing with the impact of businesses that don't exist yet, or their ability to take a form that might not exist yet, you can't come to an agreement that will reassure regulators. You're dealing with impacts on the potential to create new businesses, the incentive to create new businesses, the content people might need to build new businesses, and very hard to come up with remedies in that context. I guess unless those remedies are much more general, right? Unless they were kind of at more of a policy level than an individual deal, than a set of deals. Next, CMA was just not very impressed by Microsoft's deals that it announced with third parties like Nintendo. I think what they're really saying here is that these deals are deals that would make sense, maybe make more sense for Activision Blizzard without the merger. It's not a merger outcome, so it doesn't count. I think, again, this points to there's going to need to be work on how to effectively deliver remedies in this kind of merger where they're really considering quite forward-looking impacts on fast evolving digital markets. Next, they rejected an impact on mobile gaming because of the role of the operating system providers, Android and iOS. It's a bit of a funny one, actually, considering those markets are in the process of being regulated in many markets. So the EU Digital Markets Act will regulate access to, will regulate conditions for mobile app stores, or being investigated. So this could change. And so it's an interesting decision that essentially they're sort of saying they're skeptical because of the role that those platforms take around mobile operating systems. It feels quite conditional on the actual outcome of the current kind of regulatory discussions around smartphones. And finally, not so much of a policy point, but a kind of an interesting insight into the market. Like, we knew Call of Duty was a big deal, But this is a very big deal. I mean, obviously, it's a survey response. You never know how reliable these things are. But for a quarter of them to say that they would shift platforms away from PlayStation if you didn't have Call of Duty, saying that they'll switch platforms even where, I mean, in this case, there's physical hardware attached to that platform, right? Like it's that's quite a big deal. And I think it might be a caution against the power of distribution platforms. So, say Steam, which is the main distribution platform for PC games. If games, albeit of course in this case a very big deal of a game series, can encourage people to switch, even when they've got a physical hardware commitment like this, then maybe that should cause us to be a little cautious about the ability of people to be locked into distribution platforms. Because I would have thought that all of the normal obstacles to people switching would apply in this case, right? You know, well, I'm going to lose data, I'm going to lose save games, it's how I connect with my friends, all of those normal kind of concerns about why it might be hard to switch distribution platforms. They kind of must apply here. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't any kind of influence that the distribution platform has, but I think it speaks to the relative power of content versus that. So those are just some sort of points that stood out to me as I took a scan through the decision. I hope that's interesting. Any of your own thoughts, if you've had a chance to take a look through, do let me know anything you spotted down in the comments. Other than that, please do like, subscribe, and yeah, I'll speak to you on the next one.